Hi. It's what day have we got today? We got Thursday, the 20th of June, 2024. As you all know, the general election is just a few weeks away now. And I just want to go through quite a few things. So please excuse me when I look down. I've got quite a lot of paperwork to pick up on here. So I just want to point out a few points regarding the upcoming general election and who you might want to vote for. As you all know, I'm not about talking about what other parties do. It's more about what we do. And so, let's focus on ourselves rather than saying what they're not doing. I just want to touch on something I saw yesterday in the local online county council at Suffolk County Council in Ipswich. I just want to read it out to you. Suffolk County Council staff are to stage a rally today calling on councillors to stop more than £65 million of planned cuts. Workers will protest outside Endeavour House in Ipswich from 1 p.m. ahead of today's full council meeting, urging councillors to defend services. Staff trade union Unison says central government cash is urgently needed to protect residents and safeguard hundreds of jobs. The £65 million cuts include 11 million in staffing budgets, with an estimated 350 jobs at risk. And this is a bit that concerns me, the bit coming up next. Because we all know that, as the old song goes, I believe the children are our future. So I'm just going to read this out. Unison says redundancies have already started in children and young people's services. And these cuts in young people's services started way back. And I'll go back to 2013 when I was working at a youth club in Ipswich. And the cuts were happening then. Myself and some colleagues were invited to a meeting with our leaders, and I got quite passionate about it. And some people might say a bit angry, but I wasn't angry. I was just frustrated about where I see this going. I was actually told to calm down, not to be so passionate about it. So that was in 2013. So to read this again, saying redundancies have already started in children and young people's services, tells me that they say one thing and do another. How can they say that their focus is on young people when they're making cuts? And remember, it's saying redundancies have already started in children and young people's services. These kids ain't got a voice. We are their voice. So every time there's cuts, they start off with the children. And every time that happens, nobody does a thing. It happens. And then we wonder why there's so much crime out on the streets. So that's that point. Now I want to talk about this election which is coming up. And I just want to touch on on the Heritage Party manifesto. I'm standing for the Heritage Party, by the way, in the general elections. We believe in liberty and free speech. We will assert, promote, and defend the principles of freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom of belief, and liberty of conscience. We also believe in traditional family values. The Heritage Party will seek to maintain and strengthen the institutions of marriage and the natural family. We hold that the true and right definition of marriage is that of a covenant between is that of a covenant and union between one man and one woman. Please forgive me when I speak. I do have a brain injury of long standing, so sometimes I have a problem getting my words out. So please forgive me on that. National sovereignty. The United Kingdom should be governed only by her own citizens, and all legislation passed by Parliament should be formulated with primary respect to the national interest and the liberty and prosperity of the British people. We also believe in self-sufficiency in energy. The UK has enough fossil fuels to be self-sufficient in energy for decades to come. We should use these resources to keep the lights on, power industry, and spark a renaissance in manufacturing. Low immigration. Sadly, we can't say we've got low immigration, but this is what the Heritage Party want to bring in. Since 1997, a programme of mass immigration has been imposed on the UK. The people of this country were never consulted on this huge and rapid influx, which has caused unsustainable pressure on resources, overcrowding, and cultural concerns. Preserving our environment. The beauty of our physical environment is a part of our heritage, and it is our duty to look after it and preserve it for future generations. I'm not going to go through that whole manifesto because it's going to take a long time, but I'm just going to touch on some key points here. Self-sufficiency and skills. Education in the UK has been run down and dumbed down. It needs a complete overhaul to tackle the cultural Marxist activists who have infiltrated and corroded our educational establishments at every level. Equality before the law. Our British system of common law is the best in the world. All people are considered equal before the law, whether rich or poor, male or female, young or old, black or white. Financial responsibility. Governments easily forget that they do not have their own money. The money raised from taxation belongs to the people and should be spent wisely, not wastefully or self-interest. And this is something that I've spoken about for many, many years. When it's not your money, it's easy to be sort of like a bit wanton with it and a little bit carefree, I suppose, a little bit reckless. But when it's your money, when you've gone out and you earned it, you tend to be a little bit protective of it and a bit wise as how you spend it. But when it's not yours, how can we expect anybody to be responsible with it? So that responsibility has to happen. And if the people that aren't doing it at the moment aren't responsible with your money, maybe it's time to look for change. Low taxation. It is our aim to reduce the burden of taxation on individuals and businesses as much as possible. Tax rates should be as low and as simple as possible and should never be used as a political weapon of envy or punishment. A culture of life. The Heritage Party is pro-life. We believe in the dignity of every human being and that every life is infinitely precious. This includes the sick, the disabled, the elderly, and unborn children, who all have an inalienable right to life. Health and wholesomeness. The NHS is sadly broken. That once great institution is struggling. There are too many managers and not enough practitioners. Healthcare in the UK needs to be rebuilt from its roots, with people and patients in mind, not managers or bureaucrats or the profits of global pharmaceutical corporations. Effective and efficient transport. Transport policy should be concerned with getting people from A to B quickly and efficiently as possible, not changing society for equality, diversity, inclusion, and climate alarmism. Agriculture. A nation has some of the best agricultural land in the world. We must be good stewards of the land and use it to produce the healthiest possible food, where plants are natural and nutritious and animals are treated well throughout their lives. So that is just some of our manifesto for the Heritage Party. I wanted to just go through a few bits there. Now, one of the things that I've been working on for a number of years now is working on development of the next generation. You know, it's we can all say that, well, the next generation will look after themselves. How are they going to be able to do that if there's no services to help in their development? And also, look at it this way. You young people of 30 or 40 years of age who have got children, if your children aren't being nurtured outside by youth clubs and things that I had when I was a child, how are they going to develop out there? They might develop indoors, but we all agree that children don't just live indoors, they go outside as well. So how are we going to make sure that the next generation look after you 30 and 40-year-olds when you come to be retired? If you do retire, that is. If the young generation aren't nurtured correctly, don't have youth clubs and other outlets in order for them to engage with their peers, how are they going to develop? How are they going to be able to engage? And how are they going to be able to look after you in your old age if they're not nurtured correctly now? These are the things of great concern to me. Make no bones about it. You know, at the moment, I mean, I'm 66 years of age. I've got the next generation behind me looking after me in my retirement. I'm okay, kind of thing. But what about, like I said, the ones who are 30 and 40 years of age? Who's going to look after you when you reach my age? These are the things that aren't being addressed, and we need to address those things. We look at the production line of work. When I left school at 16, I went into work. I left school on a Friday, I went to work on a Monday, and I haven't stopped working since, even with what's going on in here. So I've been thinking about how we help our next generation. You know, if you look at, I've talked to people who are in their 30s and 40s, and they say to me, sadly, I don't think I'll ever be in the position where I can retire, because they keep raising the retirement age. So I will have to work until I'm in my 70s. Now, if you look at the amount of young people that are unemployed and looking for jobs, and they can't find jobs because nobody wants to invest in them, what happens? We have the old people being flogged literally to death. I look at it like as a production line. At the beginning of the production line, we have the young people. And in the middle-ish of the production line, we have the 30s and 40-year-olds who have been educated into their industry. So they will train up the young people in an apprenticeship kind of field. So what happens is, as we move along, those people in the middle that taught the young people over there will now be here. So the people that started here will now be here, and they will train up that generation who are here. So that production line moves along. And what we have is a continuous movement and involvement of how our working lives are successful. What's happening at the moment is we've got young people who have a hopeless mindset, and it's not their fault, it's the way the system's created it. They have nowhere to go. We work on academia, but what about the ones that are good with their hands? Where do they go? What about those that struggle with mental health? Where do they go? So we need to nurture all of those things. But again, like I say, if we don't help the young people get onto that production line, that conveyor belt, what happens is they don't get on the conveyor belt, and the old people move along and along and along and along and along, and they're working. But I've got my hands right. What's over this side? Nothing, because the old people have been flogged and flogged and flogged, and that production line doesn't exist any longer. So we need to start working back on the apprenticeships. It was there when I was a youngster. It's not difficult. Yes, our industry has been eroded. It's been sold out. And I remember when I worked for a security firm called Chubb Security many years ago, in Enfield, North London. They moved from Enfield to Sunderland, and I still remember it, Enfield to Sunderland. And they moved there because it was cheaper to move away from London and go to Sunderland. It was a hell of a lot cheaper. And a lot of the staff was told that they can move to Sunderland. Well, not many people are going to want to move to London, to the northeast. So that's what happened. It went to Sunderland. I heard some years later that it had gone from Sunderland to China. How true that is, I don't know, but I had heard through sources that it moved from Sunderland to China. So there was another erosion of our industry. Yes, it's going to be cheaper in China, but the bigger picture is not being seen. The bigger picture of cheaper is not beneficial to the people. It's beneficial to the managers and the corporations that own these companies. Yes, it's beneficial to them because they will make copious amounts of money, but at what cost? The cost is the people will struggle, the people will suffer because our industry continuously gets eroded for the sake of a few extra pounds. The bigger picture, the people. So I'm going to go on to what I want to talk about with regards to the issues that are affecting the people of Ipswich. Shops in town are struggling. Shops in town are closing. The quality of the shops are at an all-time low. Why is this? Is it because of soaring rents, where retailers cannot afford the costs? So what they do is they sell up, or very often they just move out, and the building becomes derelict. I think there's a building, not sure, but I think there's a building far end of the town. I think it's the cooperative, and that's been empty for God knows how long. So how do we address this problem? Well, I believe in order to encourage the people of Ipswich to shop in town, that we reduce the rental charges for the retailers and seek to return of the traditional town centre shops. I know a lot of people would welcome that. I know that for a fact. Reduced or indeed free parking. Because again, we have to look at why is parking going up? Why are parking charges going up high? If you want to encourage people to go into town, surely the best way is to encourage them and reduce the parking charges. But instead, the parking charges are being increased. I know one of the reasons why they're increasing the parking charges, because I've seen the document myself, because they want to bring in 15-minute cities, low traffic neighbourhoods, and I want to discourage people from using their vehicles. They want to encourage walking. They want to encourage cycling. And let's take me as an example. Where I once was able to ride a bike, as my brain condition is worsened, my balance issues have also worsened. So how am I going to get on a bike, 2 wheels, and ride into town? Not safe. What about people, other physically impaired people? How are they going to do it? It's all well and good putting these things into place, but what about the people who can't do the things they're trying to implement? Again, we need to think of everybody. We need to be inclusive. And right now, this inclusion is not happening. We need to think about everybody. So the shops, reduce the free parking. More police on the beat, a greater visual presence. And again, I go back to my younger days. You always saw a bobby on the beat, and those bobbies knew the people, and they would have a chat with them, and that visual presence also certainly stopped a lot of young people from getting into mischief. But if there's nobody around to sort of keep you in check, young people are only going to behave for so long, and then they're going to do what they want to do. So we need to think of all of those things. I'm also thinking about the homeless. A few years ago, I went into town a couple of days before Christmas to see if I could find any homeless people. I took some quilts, took some food, and I just walked around looking for homeless people. I probably looked like a homeless person myself, walking around with a bag full of quilts. So I believe that we need a greater support for the homeless by putting in compulsory purchase orders of empty shops and buildings which have been left abandoned for more than a year in the town centre, in order to put a roof over the homeless people's heads. And also via support from local companies, whether that be financial or by products being supplied. Support and encourage the homeless people in the refurbishment of the building and give them a sense of belonging and pride. Then encourage them to seek employment in the workplace. This erosion of our town and other towns across the country just needs to stop. If we keep putting prices up, people are going to go elsewhere. People are already shopping online. So if we bring the rents down for the retailers in the stores, they in turn could bring their costs down, their charges. It's not difficult to work out that if Steve that owns the newsagent is paying high rents, he's going to have to put his charges up in order to cover that. But if the rents come down, his charges can come down. That encourages people to go back into the shops, surely. Or am I missing something? So let's look at crime. First of all, I believe that we should keep the street lights on throughout the night hours. Currently, the street lights are going off at 11:30. They used to go off at midnight, and then they went off at 11:30. And for the first year, the council tax bills didn't go up. They kept the bills down because of the cuts that we had within the services we were receiving. But then they moved the goalposts again, and it's now 11:30. The lights go out. Who's to say that the lights are going to change again to go out at 11 o'clock? They keep on moving things. So I would say keep the street lights on throughout the night hours. That surely has to reduce crime. People would love to work in the dark, unseen. I said more police on the streets as a visual presence and deterrent, and I stick by that. So we need to invest. You know, get the bobbies out of the cars, get them out into the community, talking to members of the public. Sitting in cars creates division. The police need to get out there to work with the public, not just nick the odd motorists. Children should not be deliberately denied a mother and a father. We, the Heritage Party, will encourage and support the traditional family structure through the tax system and education. And we oppose the engineering of society in such a way that causes increasing numbers of children to be deliberately brought up without their own mother and father. In particular, boys need fathers. Boys who have been abandoned by their fathers or deprived of contact with them by an often discriminatory legal system are far more likely to turn to gangs and crime than boys who are raised with a male role model. Refuting divisive notions of toxic masculinity, we will promote father figures and the nurturing of each boy to become a good man. And note what it says here. We will promote father figures. It doesn't have to be a dad, but a father figure. Somebody that can be that role model for that young boy growing up. And that comes back to what I was saying before about the youth, the erosion of youth projects. I was one of those male role models. And sadly, you know, some of those projects was eroded away. I remember a colleague of mine, Ronnie will remember this, when we ran a project over in the west side of town over at Witton. And it was a successful soccer program where we mentored young boys primarily. Sadly, over a course of a year, 18 months, it became so successful that the council wanted in. And so what happened is they offered us the opportunity of us continuing to run it, but with their management. And we said, well, what would that mean? Well, that would mean that they would tell us who they would employ to coach these young boys. Now, no, we was already successful what we was doing. We was getting 100 plus young boys coming over to our sessions a day. The council saw how successful that was and wanted a piece of the cake. We said no. We spoke to the parents. Those parents was happy for us to carry on. We said no. What happened? The rent went up. They put our rent up at the sports centre. So much so that we couldn't afford to run at those kind of costs. So similar to what I'm saying about the shops in town. I was told, and I won't mention the name, but I was told, Terry, it's not difficult, just put the prices up. This is what the problem is, you see. Put the prices up, charge the parents more. What if the parents can't afford more? This is the Whitton estate in Ipswich. We made things so that everybody benefited. Our profit margin was very small. The children got a benefit from the project. In the end, we had to fold because we couldn't afford it. What happened? Ipswich Town Football Club took on the project with Ipswich Borough Council. And I actually popped over there one week over a school holiday. And there was 4 kids. One coach who looked around 20, an assistant who looked around sort of like the same age, I suppose. So this is what happens. Corporate greed gets in the way. So I've mentioned about father figures and the nurturing of each boy. I also believe that we should create a mentorship program using real life role models, whether they be mentors who have no criminal record or indeed do have a criminal record. Very often, people that have got a criminal record that have come out of the prison system and found their feet again can be the best possible examples. And I'll give you an example. We brought in one of these reformed chaps to one of our sessions, and the guy was twice the size of me, and he'd been in prison, and I won't say what for, but he'd been in prison for a number of years. And he came out and he spoke to our boys at one of our sessions, and the boys sat there and they listened to him intently as he said, and I won't swear on here, but you can imagine. He said, do not make the same mistakes as I made, thinking I was the man, because I wasn't the man. I'd done some bad things and I was punished for it. And I lost a lot of years of my liberty for doing those bad things. Don't make the same mistakes as me. Think about what you're doing before you do it. They, in my opinion, are the best possible examples to talk to our young people. A silver spoon is never going to understand a rusty spoon. But a rusty spoon will always understand a spoon that's going down the wrong route. So we need to work on that mentorship, trying to steer our young people away from a life of crime. It's not glamorous. It's not long term. And it could end up with one of two things happening. You lose your life or you lose your liberty. So we also need to upskill people coming out of the prison system and get them back into the workplace, working in the community as part of their early release. Encourage and support them at organised events where they'll be able to speak to our young people who are at risk of offending and going down the route of leading a life of criminality. There's so much here that I've got. Immigration. You know, I mentioned immigration earlier, so I'm not going to go on about it again. But I just want to talk about our roads. Our transport policy should be concerned with getting people from A to B as quickly and efficiently as possible. So it brings me to two roads in Ipswich in particular. West End Road and Norwich Road, up by Asda, by White House. There are bus lanes on Norwich Road that have been for a number of years, and anybody that coming through there after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, even after 3 o'clock in the afternoon on some days, you can be sitting there in traffic for up to sort of like 15 minutes, just sitting there in traffic with your engine running when we talk about a climate emergency. the occasional bus comes past, but there's cars lined up while we talk about a climate emergency. West End Road has just recently had a bus lane put there. Same scenario. Cars lining up, one after the other, after the other, after the other, all the way along West End Road, right from the traffic lights by Sainsbury's, right up until the courthouse, with cars lined up because of a bus lane for the occasional bus. So why don't they, if they want to put a bus lane in, why don't they put that bus lane a little bit sort of like further nearer to the traffic lights, rather than forcing all the cars into one lane way back? You know, it's just crazy that they put a bus lane where it's not necessary, and all it's done is create more congestion. And these are the same people that are talking about we are passionate about reducing the emissions of vehicles, and we are actively focused on the climate and improving the air quality. Actions speak louder than words. Their actions are actually contradicting what they're saying. Self-sufficiency in skills, pensions at 60 in the workplace. For far too long, the UK has developed a policy focused on academia in relation to our high school students. This has had a detrimental effect on our naturally manually skilled young people, leaving many of them with a feeling of hopelessness, worthlessness, where they could go on to leaving the education system with no realistic career prospects. What I have to say next will address this and give our manually talented young people a feeling of pride and self-worth, which in turn will give them hope regarding their future. So regarding state pension and retirement at 60, I would return to the days of the late 60s and 70s, when young people left school between the ages of 16 to 18 and went into work and apprenticeships within the workplace, subsidised by the government, just as it used to be. I see this, as I mentioned this earlier, as a production line system where the young school leaver goes into work and are upskilled by their qualified elders. So at the beginning of the production line are the young workers. In the middle are the educators and skilled middle-aged workers in the workplace. These young workers that have just come into the workplace are offered college incentives, qualifications, etc. And at the end of the production line are the elders who have reached the end of their working life at the age of 60, where they can enjoy their well-earned and deserved retirement. There is no incentive currently for people in the workplace knowing that they're going to work until they drop. We need to change this. We need to give young people the opportunities that we had. And we need to do that. And we need to do that now. I have heard so many politicians talking about what they want to do for our young people, and I've not seen one that's come through. This needs to change. And this is why I've stepped into this political arena. Not because I'm a politician, not because I want to be a politician, but as somebody once said to me, if you want to fight and if you want to change things, sometimes you have to fight in the devil's playground. So here I am fighting in the devil's playground because I want to change things for our next generation. I want to talk about the environment and the climate emergency. We will end the Heritage Party, this is, we will end the war on cars and carbon-based energy. We say no to low traffic neighbourhoods and the clean air zones. We say no to the 15-minute cities and the coming ban on petrol and diesel vehicles. We will ensure we have cheap, reliable, continuous energy from coal, gas and nuclear to keep the lights on and power our businesses and industries. There is no climate emergency. I have asked 3 councils via an FOI, a Freedom of Information request, for them to substantiate and show me this. All 3 of them failed miserably. They have not been able to show or prove that there's a climate emergency. So I say there is no climate emergency. The Heritage Party say there is no climate emergency. Carbon dioxide is a natural atmospheric gas. It is not a pollutant, nor is it harmful. Human activity contributes very little towards global warming, a phenomenon caused by naturally occurring gases in the atmosphere such as H2O, CO2, and CH4. The adherence to green ideology is scientifically spurious and economically insane. We need to abandon the unnecessary commitment to net zero carbon dioxide emissions and ensure that we produce enough energy to keep the lights on and power our industry. We do have a 5-point plan. I'm not going to go through it all, it's long. But if anybody wants it, let me know, I can send it on. This is a big one. This one, sexualization of the children in schools and in society. We need to protect our children. Comprehensive sexuality education has been introduced by the Tories in England. It's been introduced by Labour in Wales and the SNP in Scotland. School children are now being exposed to appalling lesson content that confuses them about gender. It undermines traditional family values and encourages sexual experimentation. The Heritage Party will ban these lessons and make it illegal to sexualize children. Let kids be kids. They will grow into their own development. It is not the right of any adult other than the parents to teach children about these things. It is wrong. And I'm going to say it's perverse. Let children grow in their own time. We need to address this, and the Heritage Party will. We will not allow schools to propagate anti-family propaganda, which undermines the picture of the traditional nuclear family as the best model of family. We will also block teaching materials and lessons which encourage early sexual activity in children before they reach the age of consent, or inappropriate materials dealing non-reproductive sexual acts. The state should not attempt to unduly interfere with family life or micromanage families and relationships. Parents are the primary educators and carers of their children and have the right to bring up their children as they so wish, either through home education or in school. There has never been a requirement for parents to register children who are home educated or a compulsion to place them in school. These freedoms should not be removed by the state. I want to talk about war, the Israel-Palestine and Ukraine-Russia. Let it be clear, the Heritage Party are pro-peace. We are for working towards peaceful solutions. We stand against war and we stand against our own young men our own young men and women going to war. Personally, I couldn't imagine anything worse than coming face to face against an enemy of war and being forced into the position of it's him or me, where I would have to kill another human being in order to save my own life. Now remember, which politician that tells you and your children to go to war has actually been on the front line? When you do come back from war with one leg missing or an arm missing, or badly disfigured in whatever way, who is going to look after you? Are the government that encourage you to fight for your country going to look after you now that you cannot look after yourself? I've seen enough people on the streets, former soldiers with PTSD, arms missing, legs missing, badly disfigured, homeless. Who's looking after them? They looked after the country, so they was told. Who's looking after them now? We need to strive for peace. We need to find a way of peace. It's no point saying we tried, didn't work. No, we have to find a way. We have to find a way. We cannot keep sending our young men and women to die for what often is a political war. And I'm not saying that the Israel and Palestine one is, or the Ukraine and Russia one is, but we know that politics is very often behind a lot of wars. We need to find peace. We need to find that rather than sending our young men and women off to die. Privatisation and corporate greed. The Conservative government, led by Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, introduced the Gas Act in 1986, which led to the privatisation of the company, and on 8th of December 1986, its shares floated on the London stock market. What that means basically is that it's no longer publicly owned. Now, I just want to talk about the profits. Despite lower seasonal demand and decreased volatility in wholesale prices, British Gas reported a hefty profit of £751 million in 2023. That's up from 72 million in 2022. In 2024, profit is expected to come in between 150 million and 250 million. This is profit, by the way. At the same time, customer debt has risen as more consumers are unable to pay their bills due to the cost of living crisis. Someone is making a hell of a lot of money out of people's misery. This also needs to be addressed. The Heritage Party will look to bring in these gas, electricity, all of our utilities back into public ownership. When you see the energy giants have pocketed over 20 billion in profits since the energy crisis started, and that's according to a new analysis of company reports. So the Heritage Party will put an end to corporate greed, where the wealthy benefit whilst the poor suffer. We will do this by returning energy companies back into public ownership and put an end to privatisation of our utility companies. So those are the things that I wanted to talk about this afternoon. There's a lot of work to be done, a heck of a lot of work to be done. And I'm not going to say it's going to happen overnight. There's so much damage been done from, let's just say, people that have come in with the right intentions that haven't been able to get it done. And also there's people coming with the wrong intentions and just look after number one. When we talk about making the world a better place, it should never come down to how much am I going to get by doing this. If we want to make the world a better place, then we need to think about other people. Think about how they are suffering. You know, when you listen to politicians talking about, yeah, we're doing this, we're going to put this in place. You know, is it happening? No. Talk is cheap. We need to start putting these things into place. And if we can't put these things into place, then we need to find somebody, an organisation that's going to do that. And the Heritage Party will be doing that if we get elected. So I want to talk about levelling up. We often hear about levelling up. Levelling up means creating opportunities for everyone across the UK by improving jobs, pay and living standards, making streets safer, protecting health and well-being, investing in high streets and town centres. Okay, let's look at the first one, improving jobs. Is that working? Not from where I see it, not from what I've been told. Pay and living standards. Is that working? No, not from what I've seen, not from what I've been told. Making streets safer. Are the streets safer? Streetlights go out at 11:30. That's just one aspect. Has that worked? Not from what I've seen, not from what I'm being told. Protecting health and well-being. Is that working? Not from what I'm seeing, not from what I'm being told. Again, people are saying they're going to do this, they're going to level up. It's leveling up. It's not working, is it? Investing in high streets and town centres. It's almost laughable, isn't it? Investing in high streets and town centres. Where is this investment? They're trying to stop people from going into the town by using their vehicles. So where's the investment when the rates are going up, the rental charges go up? Let's have a look at the environment. 1950s, there was smog. 1960s, late 60s, there was still smog. I remember going to school, waiting for a bus. Bus was 20, 30 yards. Couldn't see it until it got near you because of the thick fog and smog. So why didn't they declare a climate emergency then? You might say, oh, the knowledge wasn't there. I say nonsense. There was a lot of pollution back in the day. Carried on. I've never seen the climate, and it's superb now compared with what it was when I was young. So Where is this climate emergency? Show me. Give me the evidence. Bring me along with you. But don't tell me something that has no backing. Is there a climate emergency? I don't know. But not from what I'm seeing. Not from what I'm seeing. So if you know better and you've got the data to substantiate it, send it to me. We look at division, promises and policies not kept, fancy words designed to confuse, long fancy words where people just give up reading the paper because they put it down because they can't understand it. When did life become so confusing? Even a simple call to the GP now means having to go through a multitude of questions before speaking to a human being. And then when you do speak to a human being, you get the receptionist who is almost like come out of Stalag 13. You know, it's almost like it's like the Gestapo, just in order to get an appointment with your doctor. We need to return back to making things a little simpler. Take away the complexity of life and make things a bit easier. The Heritage Party are also against CBDC, central bank digital currency. We'll protect our borders from mass immigration and will nationalise the utilities, the rail, water, gas, and electricity companies. So that's all I want to say today. I will stand for election on the 4th of July. And if I am successful, then the work starts. I fully intend to do this work. I fully intend to deliver. And I fully intend to back up what I say. Thanks for listening. And on the 4th of July, please make sure you make the wisest decision for yourself and your family and your loved ones and friends. Whichever decision you make, I wish you well.